Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Then. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good Sunday. We're going to end off our Genesis Triple Threat weekend with another episode of Misguided or Misunderstood. Sorry, it's a Sunday morning, guys. Yeah, I have with me Ryan Gavalier. How's it going, Ryan?
Hello. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Doing good, doing good. Thanks for coming back so soon. I know
Oh,
you're busy with
absolutely.
your career, taking off.
Hey, I always have fun on the old tube of the U.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, this is the Genesis Triple Threat weekend. Um, and that happened quite by accident, guys, let me tell you. But I think it works. So, in this episode of Misguided or Misunderstood, we are talking Abacab in Genesis. Now, I love a man with a prop. There you go. Thank you, Ryan.
You're
Now,
welcome.
bit of background. Um, Genesis had been releasing an album a year, sometimes two albums a year from 70 to 81.
Mhm.
They released Duke in 1980. Some would say that was their crowning moment in terms of their prog output. In 81, they released Abacab, produced by Genesis, engineered by Hugh Padgham. Bit of a
Mhm.
turning point for the band. Some people say it was Genesis light. It was not what they wanted. Some people would say the opposite. Some people would say that it was what Genesis needed to do in order to keep going as a band. We'll
Yeah.
let you be the judge of that. So I'm going to hand this over to Ryan. What are your views, or what is your history, I should say, with Abacab and your views on it?
Well, I would say I'm a really, really big Genesis fan. They're one of my favorite bands of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I like pretty much all their albums except for I kind of like the debut. Not a big fan of it though. And then I don't like Calling All Stations. I think that album sucks. Other than that, and then Invisible Touch, I think, is okay. It's not my favorite by them, but I still like it. But I like everything else that Genesis has ever done. So I consider myself a pretty big fan of the band. And I started off as more of a Peter Gabriel fan when I was like in my late teens, early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
That was like really cool, edgy prog stuff. But around the time that I did the Genesis series on my YouTube channel, Ryan's Final Destination, um,
Right. That's right.
around around that point, I started to become a really really big fan of the Phil Collins era. And there had been some songs from that era I had already liked. Like I'd always really liked In Too Deep because my mom played that song a lot in the car when I was younger. So I always had a connection to that song and like some of their other ones. But once I started really getting into the Phil era and like getting over the stigma that I had heard from a lot of like prog fans that like it was like shitty Genesis, I'm like, no, this is probably like the better era of Genesis, honestly. Like, and I still like the Peter Gabriel era, but I just think that their songwriting got better later on. Um, I think Phil's a better singer than Peter is, to be completely honest. And I also think that Hugh Padgham's a brilliant engineer as well, and he brought out the best sound to the band because most of those Peter Gabriel albums don't have the best sound overall. They're kind of muddled and stuff, especially like Nursery Crime, which I still love. That's one of my favorite albums by the band. But like, I just think that there was a lot of improvement as the band went into the 80s. I think they're one of the greatest transitions of a band from the 70s to the 80s. Like, I think up there with like Rush, Aerosmith, and such. Like I think that Genesis is in that realm. Black Sabbath is with the Dio albums and stuff. Like I think that Genesis fit right in. And after Duke, which I think is an absolute masterpiece, we had Abacab, um, which I love this album so much. I
Mm-hmm.
think I've really been duking it out between this one and Duke is my favorite Genesis album, honestly. Like,
I like the pun. Thanks.
welcome. Welcome. Yeah, like, I don't know. It's either this one or Duke for me. at this point. I'd also probably put Wind and Wuthering up there,
Yeah.
and Nursery Crime and Lamb, but like this one, I think right now could possibly be my favorite Genesis album. Um, and there's a few reasons for that. First of all, the title track, Abacab, is maybe the greatest thing that Genesis has ever done, in my opinion. It
Mhm.
is so cool. Like, I mean, what is it, like 7 minutes long? Something like that.
Just shy of it. Yeah, 6:58 or something like that. Yeah.
So right off the bat, it's like, all right, this band's still prog. Like Abacab is, I mean, it's like dance prog. Or like it's definitely like kind of
Yeah.
groovy. It's got a different sound than like their older prog stuff, but I mean, they go into like 3 minute solos on this song on like the keyboards and stuff. It's still a prog song in my opinion, and like the drums are crazy on it. It's kind of got like especially later on like when it goes into
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
it's just like tribal and kind of evil sounding, honestly, and like it's
Yeah.
like heavy metal on the synths. That's really what it sounds like to me. And there's a lot of cool transitions, like as it goes, like when it goes from
Yeah.
it's just like a production masterpiece. Like I think it's
Yeah.
one of the best sounding songs of all time. Phil gives a great vocal performance on it. I think that Tony Banks, it's one of his shining moments, honestly. And I'm a huge fan of Tony Banks, honestly, as a keyboard player. I think he's probably the greatest prog keyboardist of all time, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
because his sound's just absolutely insane. And he obviously changed over into this era of music really well. Cool guitar on here from Mike Rutherford and bass. Um, I think Mike Rutherford he's honestly underrated as a guitar player. I think that after losing Steve Hackett, he really took the realms, honestly, and did a great job. I think Steve Hackett is a masterful guitarist, and I love his stuff that he did with Genesis, but I also feel like in some ways Rutherford's a hookier player, honestly. I think
Hmm.
he really had some great lines. So yeah, I
Hmm.
love the song Abacab. It's an absolute masterpiece. One of my favorite songs of all time. I'll just play that on repeat. Like when I need to get pumped up or something, I'll just put on Abacab. It's just so fucking good. I mean, it's just so good.
It's
Um,
okay. It's okay. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you can tell Ryan's into Abacab. Go ahead. I mean, it's fine.
definitely. No reply at all. Really cool song. I like all the like brass arrangements in this one. It's kind of high energy. It's a little bit, it feels kind of like a Nile Rodgers production, like something
Yeah.
he would
Yeah.
have done with like Madonna around that time with all those horns and stuff. Like it has like a cool mid 80s feel to it. And this is
Yeah.
81, so
Yeah.
this album is kind of calling the shots with a lot of that stuff. Like I think people think of Genesis as followers, but I think a lot of this album was very influential of what was going on at that time.
Yeah.
Me and Sarah Jane's pretty cool. That's a Banks credit, one by himself. Keep It Dark. I absolutely love that song. You know, it's so catchy. I love the riff on it. All those little slide transitions and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, like
Very dreamy, like very atmospheric.
it is. It's a strange song. I can't say I've ever really heard anything that sounds like Keep It Dark.
Yeah.
It almost feels like it's a little bit slowed down in some ways. Like it doesn't feel like it's at the right tempo entirely. And it gives it like kind of a cool fever dreamy type of feel, even though it is a generally up
Yeah.
tempo song.
Yeah.
Um, so that's side one, all perfect in my opinion. Um, Dodo and Lurker, once again, like this album is the perfect balance of prog and pop, in my opinion. Like Dodo and Lurker is proggy as hell.
Yeah.
Like this is proggier than the Duke Suite, I feel like. It's definitely heavier too. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's heavier for sure. Like Tony Banks has to be one of the heaviest keyboard players of all time. That
Yeah. Yeah. Very dramatic. Very dramatic.
it's intense.
Hmm.
I love how many genres this song goes into. Like I like when it goes into that like little reggae type of bit.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I think that's when it goes into Lurker. Although I think there's a little
Yeah.
bit of it in Dodo too. And then it goes into that cool synth soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so sweet. It's just like a weird ass song. It sounds like something that honestly, like my only comparison I could think of for that song is kind of like Spirit of the Radio by Rush. The way it goes into like all the different genres and stuff. It's kind of like a little
Yeah.
smorgasbord of music, and I like that. So yeah, I really like Dodo. It's a great side two opener. Um,
Hmm.
Who Done It? I know that's kind of a controversial song.
Yeah.
Like some people think it's one of the worst. I don't mind it. I've
Yeah.
never mind.
I think it's quirky. Yeah. I think it's
Yeah,
all
it's quirky. It's Phil kind of playing a character and stuff. And some people don't like when he does that, but I think, and I don't always like when he does it. Like Illegal Alien is an example of me not liking him doing that.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
But I think here it's fine. It's kind of a quirky, cool musically song. I think his vocal performance is fine. Man on the Corner, nice moodier track, kind of. I really like that one a lot. Um, it's a Phil Collins song solo. Like
Hmm.
he wrote it on his own.
Yeah.
Which actually this is only song on the album that he wrote by himself. And you could definitely tell that he wrote it,
Yeah.
especially like by that moody feel. It sounds like it's not exactly like it, but it sounds like something that would come out around the time of In the Air Tonight, kind of like with
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
kind of
It
moody
was
synth
around the same. It
stuff.
was around the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, because that was 81 also. Face Value came out in 81, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could, and this doesn't really sound like on face value other than In the Air Tonight, but just has moody synths and stuff. It's a pretty song. I like it. Like it or not, I don't really have too much to say about that one, to be completely honest.
Mm.
Another record, though, is a cool closer. I used to not really like that one too much, but over the years, it's kind of grown on me. It's a dramatic one, a little bit tongue in cheek.
Mm.
Um, you know, I think it's a solid closer. I mean, this album is just really good. I know I went through it pretty quick, but now I can kind of just talk about like what I appreciate. I mean,
No, it's fine. You're
I
good.
like, yeah, like I said, I think this album is really a Tony Banks album. Like I think Tony's, and I mean everybody has their contributions. Phil kills it on the drums on this album. Like I said,
Mm.
Abacab, that's some of my favorite drumming by him. Like it's not like his most complex drumming of all time, but it's so strong and so brooding every
Yeah.
single little beat that he hits. So like he's on top of his game here. Like I said, Mike is doing fantastic all over this album. Um, but man, Tony, like his keyboard parts are nuts on this album. And I just feel like as someone who does love to play the synthesizers and the keyboards and stuff, I just really appreciate where he was at this point musically. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think on a sonic level, this is definitely, in my opinion, the best sounding Genesis record.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
I think it's the clearest sound, the brightest. I feel like you really get the effect of every single instrument. Like I said during the Peter Gabriel era, there was a lot of times where like you could tell that everybody was playing brilliant, the song was brilliant, but the production would sometimes kind of muddle all the instruments. Um, so where you don't get the full effect almost.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like some of those albums could use like a Steven Wilson remix or something like that. If there
Yeah.
isn't already,
Yeah.
I
I'm
don't know.
surprised.
I don't buy those all the time. Like I don't know if there is any already. I know he's done a lot of good albums, but I feel like the Peter Gabriel Genesis era is definitely some uh an era that could definitely
It,
use a little love, honestly.
it could do the what you're saying is the Peter Gabriel era of Genesis could do with a good remix. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, they're just old albums. I mean, a lot of stuff from that era didn't sound great, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because the technologies just wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
Um,
No. Yeah. No. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I do think Lamb is a contender. I do think Lamb is a really good sounding album, but that was like 74 at that point. So we're past Dark Side of the Moon at that point.
Hmm.
And obviously that album kind of showed what she could do with Sonics in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. So I feel like Lamb, yeah, that's a really great sounding album. I think Wind and Wuthering's a really great sounding album.
Hmm.
I think that's also a contender probably, but I really do think that sonically this one brings out the best in Genesis.
Hmm.
And I mean, it is a poppier album at times, but I like pop, and I think that Genesis did pop better than just about anybody, honestly. And I also think they did prog better than most too. So I just feel like this album, like I said, is a really happy balance for me. Um, and it's between this one and Duke probably for my favorite. I would give it, if I'm gonna give it a rating, I'd probably say 9.5 out of 10.
Holy shit.
Um,
Okay.
Only because like even though Like It or Not's good, it's not like an overly memorable track to me. So I'm
Yeah.
not gonna give it a perfect 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a fantastic record. I think that the band did a lot of cool different styles. They did some versions of like pop and synth pop that really didn't sound like anything else at that point in time.
Hmm.
I mean, what I was kind of trying to describe with Keep It Dark is just the way it goes like wow, bum, 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 bum.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like it's super strange. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you just don't expect that kind of stuff on this album. And it's just awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this album. If we're talking misguided or misunderstood, it's complicated because obviously there's going to be people who this just isn't their thing.
Mhm.
But when I've seen like ranking lists, because I have seen it where they'll say this is like one of the biggest missteps in a band's history. I'm like,
Okay. Yeah, I've seen
bullshit.
that too. Yeah.
This is like a masterpiece of an album.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if you
Okay.
think this is like one of the worst albums of all time, you need to listen to some more music. That's all I would tell those people. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I okay. No, I agree with you 100% on that
yeah.
level. Well, my opinion is, I mean, for me, this is the album that Genesis needed to make.
Hmm.
Um, the last album, Duke, produced by David Henschel, who had honestly, who had first of all, he worked with Queen on their debut as an engineer.
Yeah.
One of the many engineers on the Queen debut release from '73. He'd worked with the band, with Genesis up until from I believe Trick of the Tail up until Duke. So he had a long history with the group. I think that um, I think that Abacab is a good way to start off the '80s, like into the '80s. Like, I mean, yes, they did Duke in '80, and then they did this in '81. I think this was a good turning point for them. I think this was a necessary turning point for them. I think
Oh
that
yeah.
had they done another album like in the vein of uh and then there were three, there would have been problems for them. Um in terms of being able to be relevant and keep
Yeah.
staying fresh. Hugh Padgham has said that if he has said in interviews, if you've ever been to a concert, the drums are so loud that when you're standing next to a drummer playing the drums on stage, you can barely hear what the whatever else is going on because it is so loud in your ears. He said that he wanted to bring the drums to the forefront,
Yeah.
production wise, going forward, and he did so.
Oh yeah.
He did so. I think that for me, side one is a masterpiece
Mhm.
of Abacab. I mean, you have Abacab, prog or not, whatever you want to call it, Genesis Light, prog light, whatever you want to call it, it bloody works. Okay. And then you've got No Reply at All, the leadoff single with the Phoenix Horns from Earth, Wind, and Fire. Hello. It's hooky, it's melodic, it is catchy as all hell. It works. Okay. Then you've got Me and Sarah Jane with the use of the early versions of the drum machines that were being used in the early 80s. I mean, again, it's catchy. It's got different sections to it, so it could still have a prog feel to it, and it's really good. I mean, and Keep It Dark, I get it. I mean, that drum line, that drum pattern that he's got going, and then what happened was, according to Banks, it was a drum pattern that Collins had come up with, and they built a song around it, right? And they kept it very sort of, I don't want to say plain, meaning in a bad way, but they kept it very simple in terms of the arrangement. And that synth bass that comes in, like, come on, like a very pumping, very throbbing, and it moves the song along fantastic. And then when it goes into the sweeps, in terms of the choruses, amazing, very dreamlike, very ethereal, atmospheric, beautiful. I think that is a masterpiece. Every song on side one is fantastic. um you know Dodo Lurker, like you said, fantastic, like good. That is prog. It's prog
Yeah.
all in 1980s. Who done it? I think it's a funny, Banks would put it, a funny one-off song, like very quirky, right? Phil Collins with the accent that he does, very heavy Cockney accent, whatever it is, like it's great. The rest of the tracks, Man in the Corner, I think that could fit on face value because they were released around the same time. And when they went into the studio, they agreed that each of them were going to have one specific track written by them solo, and the rest were going to be a group effort. So I think that's a strong track. I think it's fantastic. Like it or not, I'm with you. It's good, but really it doesn't do much in terms of enhancing the album. It's there, you know. They could have put Paper Late instead,
Hmm.
you know,
I
at least for
agree.
the North American market, because 3x3 was not released in North America as an EP, right? They could have taken out Like It or Not and put in Paper Late, and bam, you have a killer. Well, side one and two, and another record. It is a good way to end off the album. It's a good song. I is it is it misguided or was it misunderstood? I do not think it was a misguided attempt by the band. I think it was an attempt by the band to stay relevant and stay fresh. And you know what? Everybody wants a hit. You know what I mean? As much as people say, we're into it, we're into the music, and we feel our integrity, should stay intact with regards to our compositions. Bullshit. Everybody once in a while wants a hit single. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, you got that with this album. And I gotta say, when this album came out, there are albums that you think about at certain points in time from in terms of the 80s or whenever. For me, it was the 80s. I remember hearing about this album and seeing it around. I remember AC/DC for those about to rock. You know, that these two albums were always together. And to a lesser extent, Belladonna from Stevie Nicks. So
Yeah,
but there are certain albums that come into your mind and like you remember with fondness, and this is one of them. Do I think that the earlier albums would benefit from a Stephen Wilson remix? Oh yeah, definitely.
definitely.
The productions are a bit muddy on the 70s albums. Drums are there, but they're more of an afterthought in terms of the production. They're not prominent. They're not there. You know what I mean? They're not really present. So I think this album closed the books on the old Genesis and brought them into the 80s in a good way, right? I mean, whatever you think of Invisible Touch, okay, like that's a whole different animal, right? That's a whole different animal and a whole different topic. But for me, I do not think this was a misguided attempt. I think a lot of fans, not that they misunderstood, I think they just didn't want to understand, right?
Yeah,
They missed the Genesis of old, right? And,
yeah.
it's the way it
Yeah,
is. So,
bands progress, especially progressive rock bands. They
yeah,
they progress, like that's
yeah,
what they do. And I just wanted to mention because I was looking at it. So the four singles on this album were Abacab,
yeah,
No Reply at All, Keep It Dark, and Man on the Corner. I would say like three of those are very like unpredictable singles with Abacab, Keep It Dark, and Man on the Corner. Like they on the album, they're predictable as the singles, but like in terms of what other bands were thinking of a hit single being, they're really weird songs. Like Genesis still held their artistic integrity because they were still making music that no one else was making. I just feel like they shifted styles and they made a new style that was really weird and cool. Like I don't know,
yeah,
they were innovators at this point still, I would
yeah.
say.
I would say so too. I think in terms of the single selection, excuse me, I think that they chose the singles that best represented the album
Definitely.
from all facets, all sides, right?
Yeah.
And I think I think they did good. I think they did really good. Um,
Yeah.
so ladies and gentlemen, that is our episode. Unless Ryan has anything more to add, do you? Is there anything more to?
Um Not, no, I'm good. I just, I love this album. I think if you haven't listened to it in a while, give it another listen.
I would agree. I would agree. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, that is the episode of Misguided Misunderstood, Abacab from Genesis. What do you think? Was it a misguided attempt by the band, or was it misunderstood by the audience and critics at large? Should they have stayed in their prog roots? Should they have progressed into the pop realm? Some people would say they may have gone too far, left of center. Who knows? You be the judge. Please listen to the album and put your comments down there, down below. Sorry, don't know what to do with my hands. So put your comments down there. Let me know. Let us know what you think of Abacab. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you think it's Genesis light? Do you think it's prog light? There are no wrong answers, just opinions. And I want to thank Ryan Gavler for coming on today. Um, you have a new album coming out, do you not, sir?
Oh yeah. Give me one sec. I have a few things to plug.
Okay, well,
Um,
we'll plug them.
so first of all, if you haven't heard it yet, check out Shadow Play Behavioral Futures Marketplace from August. It's on my label, Gavalier Productions. Another album on there. Rand Anthony Kelly's No Easy Access, which came out in September. Both really, really cool albums that I produced. The instruments on Shadow Play. Um, but yeah, check those out. And then my solo album, Ryan Gavalier's Night of the Living Dead, is coming out on October 13th. I don't have the CDs here yet. They're on their way though. They might get here a little couple of days after the 13th, but it'll be digital on the 13th for sure. Um, and yeah, that's all on Gavalier Productions. You can go on gavalierproductions.org, find all those, get links to the band camps and stuff where you can purchase the albums, and they're all also on all major streaming platforms. So if you listen on Spotify or Apple Music, YouTube, you could find all these albums there. Already working on another album of my own. It's completely different than Night of the Living Dead. It's a hard rock and pop album. Um, so you guys are going to be in for a treat probably around March, but I'll have some singles and stuff out before then. And I'm also thinking of doing a compilation for my label too of some of my favorite songs from 2023 from the label. So that should be coming out pretty soon as well. But gavalierproductions.org.
I'll put a link in the description for the video below so you guys can check it out. I'll put the link also for Bandcamp for Ryan's album Night of the Living Dead. It is really good.
Thank
If you
you.
want to get yourself, if you want to scare the shit out of yourself, listen to this album. Okay?
Yeah.
Really, Night of the Living Dead, listen to the album. Don't listen to it with the lights off. Turn the lights on. Make sure the couch is up against the wall when you're listening to it. Or if it isn't, look behind you before you start listening to it, because it is quite an experience. Not one track should be listened to separately. You should listen to the whole album as an experience. Okay? From beginning
Thank
to
you.
end. Don't skip any of the tracks. So I'm going to thank again Mr. Ryan Gavalier for appearing. He's going to be back soon on the channel. We're going to be doing a John Lennon album ranking. So we're going to finalize that up, firm that up, and see what we're going to do with that. I'm going to be posting the video for the Pink Floyd album ranking. That was a long show last night. I barely made it through, but we did it. It was good. So all 15 albums are rated, rated and ranked. Yeah, including Endless River. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be coming up tomorrow. And Bill Schuster's coming on the channel again soon to talk about Rocky Horror Picture Show. And we're going to be doing other, I believe we're doing our top 10 favorite albums of all time. That's going to be a good one. So please check this all out. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content I've got coming up. And for Mr. Ryan Gavalier, I'm Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day. Look after yourselves and one another. Bye for now.